You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is archive entry 001. The subject of this record is known only as the garden that remembers every season. Its exact location cannot be plotted on any conventional map. In fact, it is not said to exist in a single location at all. It is said to appear only when the mind is no longer certain which season it belongs to. The first recorded observation was made by a department surveyor who described an unusual shift in atmospheric continuity. They reported walking through an ordinary stretch of countryside, unremarkable in every measurable sense, when the air began to change its texture around them. Not temperature, not humidity, but texture, as if winter and spring had briefly overlapped in the same breath. The path ahead did not end, it softened. Grass became less like vegetation and more like memory attempting to hold shape. And then, without transition, the garden was there. Not entered, not approached, simply present. The gate, if it can be called that, was never described as opening. Instead, it was described as remembering it was already open. Ironwork entwined with flowering vines formed a structure that seemed less built than grown through repeated seasons of attention. Every rusted hinge carried a different climate. Every crack in the wood suggested a different year. Inside, the garden does not follow linear time. It cycles through it, but not in sequence. At one moment, autumn is present in full authority, leaves falling with deliberate grace, as if each one has chosen its moment carefully. And then, without warning, spring arrives beneath it, not replacing autumn, but existing beneath it like a second emotional layer. Surveyors consistently report a sensation of recognition, not recognition of place, but of feeling, as though every season ever experienced is still happening here, simultaneously, waiting to be noticed again. The trees are the most unusual feature. They do not grow, they accumulate. Branches carry blossoms, snow, and dried leaves at the same time. One observer described it as watching time refuse to choose a direction. There is a central path that appears to lead deeper into the garden. However, no two surveyors agree on where it goes. Some say it leads to a greenhouse filled with perpetual summer. Others insist it leads to a frozen pond beneath a sky that has forgotten noon. A small number of reports suggest it leads nowhere at all, only a return to the gate, slightly altered, as if the garden is learning from those who enter it. Sound behaves differently here. Birdsong is present, but not localized. It does not come from trees. It comes from intervals between thoughts. Wind moves through the space with unusual intelligence, pausing occasionally as if listening before continuing. Even silence feels layered, not empty, but composed. One of the most consistent findings is the presence of what surveyors refer to as seasonal echoes. These are moments where a visitor experiences a memory that does not belong to them. A childhood winter morning, a late summer evening, a spring rain they cannot place. But each memory feels emotionally accurate, even if historically impossible. The department has not determined whether the garden contains these memories. or reflects them. There is a structure at the centre of the garden. Some describe it as a greenhouse, others as a conservatory, others still refuse to name it at all. It is constructed of glass that is never fully clean or fully dirty. Inside, light behaves incorrectly. Not broken, simply undecided. Those who claim to have entered the structure describe rows of plants that should not coexist. Snowdrop flowers blooming beside desert succulents, cherry blossoms drifting across sand, vines shaped like frozen lightning. Each plant appears perfectly adapted to a season that does not exist anywhere else. At the heart of the structure is a single table. On it are placed 4 objects: a dried leaf, a fresh bud, a frozen petal, and something that cannot be classified, described only as a warm absence. No known surveyor has been able to explain the significance of this arrangement. However, all report the same sensation when viewing it. A quiet understanding that all seasons are occurring simultaneously, and that time is not passing through the garden. It is resting within it. There is one final and consistent observation. Visitors do not leave the garden in the same emotional season they entered. Those who arrive in grief often leave with something resembling spring. Those who arrive in joy often leave quieter, as if autumn has gently passed through them. Not loss, not gain, adjustment. It is important to note that no physical evidence of the garden has ever been retrieved. No soil samples remain stable. No photographs retain consistent detail. Images shift depending on when they are viewed, as though the garden resists being fixed into a single interpretation. And yet, multiple independent reports describe the same final experience. Standing at the gate once more, looking back, and realizing the garden has not remained behind them. It has simply stopped being visible, like a season that has finished observing you. The department classifies the garden that remembers every season as type, seasonal memory construct, non-linear habitat, emotional continuity site, access level, unrestricted in theory, unrepeatable in practice. Final note from the archivist. There are places that exist to be found. There are places that exist to be forgotten. And then there are places that exist only to remind you that everything you have ever lived through is still happening somewhere, just not in the order you expected. This concludes archive entry 001. The record is sealed. The garden remains open. End transmission.